Welcome to our first organizational meeting for our campaign, the Coalition to End Toxic Aerosols campaign. This is a campaign that's focused on Santa Cruz County. Oh, by the way, my name is Bruce Tanner. My wife Cynthia and I are the co-organizers of the Thrive Solutions Group for Santa Cruz. And we have a meetup site. Our meetup site, if you take one of the geoengineering flyers in the back, it's got the URL for our meetup site on there. So this campaign is devoted to both raising the awareness of geoengineering and its seriousness in Santa Cruz. Many people still don't seem to know that it's going on, and many people seem to not want to know that it's going on, but it's impacting us in a very severe way, and the impact is accelerating. But we not only want to raise the awareness in Santa Cruz and bring this to the county and also the city government in order to get some real action to begin enforcing our innate rights not to be poisoned on a daily basis. But we're creating a template. Through this process, we're going to try to document every aspect of what we're doing and have a hub where we can communicate with people from other jurisdictions so that this can go nationwide, so that we can begin developing the kind of popular pressure that we need to actually stop this program, because this is insane. And I certainly hope that you will be willing to get involved in this. We'll have a lot of different things that you'll be able to do. In the process, we're going to, Foster and Kimberly Gamble are here tonight, and they're going to explain how they organized to stop the little brown apple moth spray in Santa Cruz in 2008, which was major. They not only stopped it in Santa Cruz, but they stopped it throughout the state, and they got a lot of municipal governments involved in the process. And that's the kind of success that we're hoping to repeat and to build on. While the little brown apple moth spray was incredibly toxic, and people experienced the effects directly and immediately because they were spraying, and you couldn't deny it, they were spraying right over people's heads. The geoengineering program is much, much more insidious, because this is going on all over the world, and it is literally poisoning the forests of the world. It's poisoning the oceans, and it's creating incredible levels of respiratory disease all over the world. So we hope that you can get active. We want to keep this campaign completely transparent and open. We want to be open to everybody's input on their creative ideas, their ideas for spreading the word, for publicity projects, for how to work with legislators, everything that can possibly be done to move this forward. We really welcome your activity and your input. So we're going to start off with a couple of videos. This is a presentation by Dane Wigington that he did the day before they went before the Shasta Board of Supervisors and presented expert testimony for over 2 hours, resulting in a resolution from the supervisors to escalate it to their county staff, to the state officials and legislators, and also to the federal level, to the federal regulators and the federal government. So he presented this the day before they had that meeting, and you can see that meeting online. And so we'll show you that, and then after I show you Dane's presentation, we will see the last 8 minutes of the Shasta Supervisors meeting, where they vote for their resolution, and you can see how they reacted to the, I mean, they had definitely more than 400 people. It was the most people that had ever attended a Shasta Supervisors meeting in history. It was maybe, some people say it was as many as 500. That is the kind of turnout that we're going to have in this county if we're going to have these supervisors take any kind of action at all. So it's going to take some work. We're going to have to educate our friends and neighbors, our families, and help people understand how serious this is. So anyway, thanks so much for coming out tonight, and I hope to see you in the campaign.
My name is Dane Wigington with the website geoengineeringwatch.org. This is not a job I wanted. I don't have any political orientation. I've never been an activist of any sort. But quite simply, as this issue came to my attention, I have a background in renewable energy with Bechtel Power. And as this issue came to my attention from losing significant amounts of solar uptake from whatever these aircraft were putting above my home, I had no choice but to investigate, and I was astounded at what I found. I didn't like what I found, started to test my rainwater, found there was an incredible amount of toxic metals in that water. Those metals matched geoengineering patents, and those amounts have escalated over the course of 5 years, in the case of aluminum, as much as 50,000% in a single rain event. We're talking about highly toxic rain. How many people here believe this is happening? Anybody believe it's not happening? Don't be shy. Nothing wrong with skepticism. Well, I'm good. I'll hopefully answer your question for the evening, and I'm glad you came. I'm going to dive right into my presentation here, and this presentation is more tailored to what's affecting us right here, right now in Northern California. Of course, if the ship sinks, the whole ship sinks, so things that are happening around the globe affect us as well. But we have some very straightforward elements that are affecting us here. Congressional research, geoengineering, governance, and technology. When we have local media or media around the globe trying to marginalize this issue using terms specifically for that purpose. I got a call from the Searchlight a few days ago, specifically asked them repeatedly, please don't use terms we don't use. We don't use the chemtrails term. It's not science. What's the only term they use, typically? So you have a media system whose job it is to marginalize an issue this dire. So when we use terms like geoengineering, this is important when you share this issue with others. When you use the science terms, people find science. The issue has credibility. So the semantics are important, geoengineering and climate engineering. That's a 40-page global governance document to the US Congress from a year ago. Now, does that look like a natural trail, like something took a slice out of the middle of it? Again, there's no question they're spraying. We have film footage of them spraying. Now, as this particular footage rolls here, we put 3 on at once. You can see disbursement from a wing on the top right. If you look at the lower film, you can see there's 2 aircraft there spraying. One shuts off. Watch that film closely. You see the one trail stopped. There's still an aircraft in the plume there. It's hard to see on this footage, but you'll watch that come on again. That's a C-17 Globemaster. Up on the top left, you have a KC-10 military tanker. You'll see him shut off that trail completely. And again, we have photographs of wing disbursement. Now, watch this lower level here. There's a second aircraft there, and you'll see him turn on in a second. He's actually out of the frame. Or I think we've already passed, yeah, we've already passed that frame. He'll turn back on in a minute. We just put this one together today, so it's rolling twice. But the bottom line is this. We have film footage of them spraying. There's no question they're spraying. So when people try to debate this issue, you can't really debate it. I mean, we have a lot more film footage than what we're showing here. Stratospheric Welsbach seeding for reduction of global warming. We have 150 patents. Why would they make patents if there wasn't something going on? Why would patents go all the way back to the late 40s? We have a long list of patents, again about 150, and the exact ingredients we see in these patents, this one was assigned to Hughes Aircraft in 1991, oxides of metal. Why do they use metal? Why do they use aluminum? Because aluminum reflects, and that's the stated purpose of these programs, solar radiation management, to reflect the sun. The rub is they're destroying Earth's natural protection by doing this. How much sense does that make? So again, we have patents assigned to DoD, Department of Defense, Hughes Aircraft, listing the exact materials that are raining down on us in absolutely lethal amounts. It's not coming from China. We have from CARB, California Air Resources Board, studies on the metals, the aerosols coming from China. Aluminum is not amongst those metals because aluminum can't float across oceans. Mercury can because mercury converts to a gaseous state, but not aluminum. So we have enough aluminum coming down on us now to change forest floor pHs. That takes a lot of metal. Updated, this is engineered drought catastrophe, target California. Now, in the case of California, one, we have a shredded ozone layer, northern and southern hemispheres now. The power structure is trying desperately to hide that from us. We can see our trees around town here. They're burnt to a crisp. So, and we had a recent disclosure I'll talk about in a minute from NASA. But we also have a very straightforward equation. We know from available science that when you aerosolize the atmosphere, it diminishes and disperses rainfall. This is not about cloud seeding to create rain. Again, it's about creating artificial, toxic cloud cover. So we have satellite imagery, which I'll show in a moment, and this is what blocks our storm track. This is what's keeping the rain from falling in California. If you see off the US West Coast, if you look closely near the bottom center, you can see the aircraft trailing. I don't know how visible it is to all of you, but that entire marine layer is aerosols, and all that blows in on us. And what happens when they aerosolize in the atmosphere? Again, it shreds ozone, and it diminishes and disperses rain. It reduces evaporation. This is as far as the rainfall in California, it's a 2 + 2 = 4 equation. Now, I presented this data to Gavin Newsom in the Capitol 2 months ago in his office with his aide. There's no question they got what I passed on to them, but apparently they're too comfortable in their job still to actually do anything about this issue. And until the population is unwilling to look the other way, they'll continue to do nothing. Another picture. How obvious is that spraying? Why don't meteorologists talk about this? Because it's a bad career decision. It's a bad career decision, so they simply want to stay in their job. I've been in the field with USDA soil scientists measuring soil pHs in Shasta County with a solid USDA baseline, getting measurements 15 to 20 times above that baseline. And they looked at me sheepishly and said, what do you want us to do about it? They want to go to work at 8 and come home at 5, and that's simply not okay. It's not okay to overlook this issue. The gravity of it is far too immense. Another picture, you see virtual grid patterns. Are we supposed to believe that's commercial traffic, doing loops in one case and grid patterns in another? It's absolutely not commercial traffic. And if you look at the scope and scale of what they can cover, those are 100% aerosol clouds over the Pacific. That's one of their goals, to block the sun over the oceans, to keep the thermal buildup, the heat, from building up in the oceans. But again, the paradox is what they're doing is actually making the overall situation worse because it traps more heat, then it deflects, shreds the ozone layer, disrupts the hydrological cycle. This is the pharmaceutical cure for planet Earth that has a list of side effects so long that it makes the original problem look benign. Yet another. This one's a little blurry, but you still see the trailing off the coast. Again, same thing. This is typical every day. When we see these silvery white skies toward the horizon in the morning in the east, in the afternoon in the west, skies should be blue, not silvery white. And the bottom line is, even when you don't see the horizon-to-horizon trails, we are absolutely still being sprayed. When you see even the shorter, bright trails, still aerosol disbursement. I challenge anybody, look at the high bypass turbofan jet engine, which is all tankers and all commercial carriers. 80% of the air that passes through that engine is non-combusted. That engine by design is almost incapable of making any type of trail. So when you see the silvery white skies still being sprayed, the horizon-to-horizon trails are the tip of the iceberg for these programs. Now, this is a very important map. This shows deviation from normal temperatures. This is a NASA map, and if you look, the only place that's colder than the 30-year norm is a few spots in Antarctica and the eastern half of North America. Why is that? Because that's why they're really focusing the climate engineering. That's where they're really concentrating. Why? Because that confuses a lot of people. That makes leaders around the globe think, hey, maybe geoengineering works. You can cool one place at the cost of making the rest of the planet warmer. So when we see a map like this that's so incredibly anomalous, it makes very clear, again, where we see a geoengineering effort being concentrated, the polar vortex, which I'm sure you've all heard of, that keeps happening again and again, and it's going to happen this week again, a polar vortex in the middle of summer. The climate's being completely manipulated from bottom to top. Another important map, again, this is deviation from normal temperatures. You see most of the globe is in the darker colors, which is warmer than normal. And I know this confuses a lot of people because they see a lot of headlines to the contrary. If you're a geoengineer and you're trying to sell geoengineering, you want people to think it works. And that's why there's a lot of push in the media toward this. What we need to understand, if they try to sell us geoengineering as a cure, it is not a cure, it is a curse. It is not making the planet cooler, it is making a bad situation worse. But again, you see eastern half of North America, a couple other spots where they're geoengineering heavily over populations. That's it. Now, these are NOAA maps. I save these maps because they're impossible to find after the fact because I don't think they want people looking at this. Does that look natural to anybody? To have half of the country frying and the other half freezing? Now, this is going back to October 2013. This is as unnatural meteorologically as you could get. How can this happen? Because this is geoengineering. This is what happens when you upset the natural system. So when you see those colors, the oranges and reds, every tier of color is an indication of 2 to 3 degrees above normal. So as you progress into the darker colors, you might be 10, 15 degrees above normal. Opposite is true on the other side. So you have half the country frying, half of it freezing. That's October 2013. This is HARP. For those that don't know what HARP is, it's an ionosphere heater. That's part of these programs. So as they spray these particulates, it makes the atmosphere more conductive, more electrically conductive. These are incredibly huge and powerful ground-based facilities that they use to manipulate these particulates. So when you have the polarization of these particulates that's sensitive to radio frequency, they can cause those particulates to scatter out and cover the sky, or they can cause them to attract and come together and form big enough condensation nuclei to cause rain. Again, playing God with the weather with extremely toxic materials. That facility can put out about 3 billion watts of power, billion with a B. It's capable of heating the ionosphere to 15,000 degrees Fahrenheit over areas hundreds of square miles. What they're doing to our climate system is beyond science fiction, but it's fact. This looks like something from a science fiction movie. That's the same type of facility on a mobile platform. It's called SBX radar, sea-based X-band radar, for the same purpose, manipulating the climate system. Again, the polar vortex, does that look natural to you? These giant dips that are only coming down over North America. Last winter, we had temperatures in the lower 48 that were colder than the North Pole. Why is that? Because they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. They push cold air south. They nucleate that moisture with chemical ice nucleation to cool it off, to create headlines, to make it appear geoengineering is working. It's not working. This is the polar vortex from this week. Now, I ask anybody, if anybody that knows anything about meteorology, that's unprecedented. To have a giant teardrop of cold air in one part of the country while the rest of the country fries, while Siberia fries. This is simply, it's like a bunch of kids in a sandbox with unimaginably powerful toys that are just experimenting with the atmosphere, literally. Another GISS map. Again, you see where it's cold over North America and Canada and actually warmer in the Arctic than it is here. Headlines don't cover this. While the eastern U.S. was freezing last year, Alaska had its warmest January on record. Nobody talked about that. Again, polar vortex, manipulation of the jet stream. You see the Pacific air cut off. Why is that? Because with these giant ionosphere heaters and the aerosolized skies, they can heat an area or they can cool an area. And as they heat over California, it causes an even stronger high pressure that spins the jet stream clockwise. That allows them to push that up through Alaska, causing the warmest January on record. They pump the air back south, and that's what enabled them to create this parade of winter snowstorms we saw last year. So if everybody remembers, 2012 was the warmest year ever recorded in the continental U.S., 50,000 high temperature records set. How could it switch so radically in 1 year? Geoengineering. They had a point to prove, and they're trying to prove it. Again, GISS maps, you see the warm temperatures over the Arctic in the darker colors. Where is it cold? Continental U.S. The lower 48 is 1.5% of Earth's surface area. 1.5%, that's not much. And that's what they're focusing on cooling because that's where it makes the biggest impression. Again, rainfall. I want to make this point. As I showed you the maps before where the west was frying and the east was cold, the A indicates different tiers of above normal rainfall. The darker color, the more excessive rain you get. The opposite is true along the whole west coast. Does that look natural? If moisture moves from west to east, How does it get to the east without crossing over the west, without dropping anything? Because they aerosolize our rain. As it's coming in from the Pacific, and they seed those clouds, and they cause a disbursement of that rain, it migrates it somewhere else. So at this point, they're virtually cutting off our rain. When you see all that spray off the coast, that's part of this process. When you see a map like this where one, and especially a configuration like that where the moisture has to come across us to get inland, how does that happen without them migrating it there? This is, again, this is astounding to see maps like this, where virtually the whole western U.S. is frozen like a line down. Is this a game for them? Is it a game? This is a NOAA map going into, we're now into January. So as you remember the polar vortex in the eastern half of the U.S., look what happened in the western half. Nobody talks about that in the Weather Channel per se. Same thing, this is moving 2 weeks further out. How does it stay in these positions? Because it's locked into these positions. How many meteorologists have you heard saying, we can't figure out what's keeping this persistent high pressure over the west? We just can't figure it out. Well, you know, when you're not looking at the whole picture, how can you figure it out? So the bottom line is, again, whatever the agenda is here, we can all speculate, whether it's to cut off the water to California to bring us to our knees, to take water rights, whether we're a climate sacrifice zone. It doesn't really make much difference if we turn our spigot on and nothing comes out. Yet another map moving into March, same thing, over and over and over. It's absolutely unprecedented, and this is absolutely a result of climate engineering. Again, 2 weeks later, same thing, same pattern. Meteorologically speaking, this is absolutely unprecedented, where you're 20, 25 degrees below normal on one side, 25 degrees above on the other. Into April, 2 weeks again, same basic pattern, held in place, locked in place, absolutely frozen due to the pattern they've set up over us. 2 weeks further on out again, same thing, just trying to make a point. Now we're into July, same thing. This is not a joke. I mean, by the time, if this continues, if the lack of moisture over us continues, I think we all know what's coming. So at this point, no matter what we do on the ground to try to exercise our rights, if they have that kind of power over us, if they can shut off our water, if they can toxify our air and soils, it's going to be game over if it continues. But the bottom line is these maps are completely unprecedented. You don't see this kind of stuff on CNN. These are NOAA maps, by the way. And by the way, NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, who does their mapping? Raytheon. Raytheon's a defense industry contractor up to their eyeballs in weather modification. So you have the foxes virtually running the hen house. Who does FAA's weather modeling? Lockheed Martin, also a defense contractor, also up to their eyes in weather modification. This is interesting. NOAA, again, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, stating that in the last 10 years, the atmosphere is full of particulates, and they don't know where it's coming from. Now, how astounding is that? How incredibly total are the blinders when we have this kind of behavior from quote-unquote agencies that are supposed to tell us what's wrong? And why don't the air quality agencies show anything? Because this is what you always hear. This can't be going on because we're not showing anything. An example I use because it's accurate. How the hell do you catch a minnow with a tuna net? You can't do it. How do you find nanoparticulates with air quality systems that only measure PM 2.5 at best? You can't get an air sample that shows these small particulates with equipment that's not designed to do it. So we have our local air quality literally trying to convince us none of this is happening because their equipment is not capable of showing this, and they won't do another test. At least not to date, they haven't. Their job seems to be to try to convince us that we should ignore a threat of this magnitude, and that's not acceptable. Alzheimer's and autism, the common link, aluminum exposure. There's a mountain of aluminum coming down on us. It's accumulating in all of us. We have statements from internationally recognized neuroscientists like Dr. Russell Blaylock stating that these particulates enter right through our lung lining, go right into our bloodstream, where they build up in our systems like a plaque. Tomorrow we have one of the top neurologists in Northern California speaking about this issue. He's being inundated with patients that are now becoming cognitively dysfunctional, Alzheimer's and autism, or excuse me, Alzheimer's and dementia. 1 in 3 seniors now dies with Alzheimer's and or dementia. Not dies from it, but dies with it. But many are dying from Alzheimer's now. It's going absolutely off the charts. Autism, 10,000% increase. in the last 50 years. 1 in 50 children now dies again, or excuse me, now has autism. So that's the kind of increases we're seeing are absolutely cataclysmic. Prevalence of Alzheimer's disease, that graph's not hard to figure out. It's going through the roof. It can't not go through the roof. There's a direct cause and effect happening here, and we are not speculating about these materials being in the air. We've done 60-plus lab tests in Shasta County alone. The material's there. It's inarguable. Unprecedented ozone hole opens up over the Canadian Arctic. The kind of headline you don't see, you have to dig for this. Canadian government threatened publicly to fire their scientists if they talk to the media about this ozone hole. How many of you can feel how hot the sun is? It's not your imagination. We started measuring UV because we knew that geoengineering destroys the ozone layer. We know that from science study. We started measuring a year and a half ago. We meticulously documented our measurements. We released it about a year ago. Our website was taken down in 15 minutes. It was taken down 8 times in the next 2 days. And we had a lot of flack from academicians, meteorologists that said this is impossible. You're wrong. So now a week ago, we have NASA releasing their headlines. This is one of them, CBS News from a week ago. Blazing world record, strongest UV rays ever measured on Earth. Why were we so far ahead of them? How can a system be designed in a manner that virtually does everything possible to hide this kind of data? And how high were these UV ratings? They weren't 10 or 20 or 30% higher. They were 300% higher than what's already considered extreme. That's about like walking out and being told that tomorrow it's going to be 400 degrees outside. That's about the equivalent. They measured UV. If any of you are familiar with the UV scale, 11 or 12 is considered very extreme. Caution should be taken. NASA measured in 2003 UV levels of 43. 43, equivalent to the surface of Mars, literally. Why did it take 11 years for them to release that data? And how much worse is it now? And why aren't they telling us? Because they don't want to cause a panic, and they certainly don't want any light being shown on the geoengineering that's causing the destruction of the ozone layer. CFCs that we've been told are the cause are a factor, but they're a very small factor mathematically compared to the climate engineering. This is what our trees look like around Redding. Take a good look, because they look worse every day. It takes a lot of UV to burn the bark right off the side of the tree. And anybody who tells you this is normal, it's not normal. These UV levels have been high for decades. They're getting higher every single day. So although you saw some bark scorched 30 years ago, it got much worse, and now you can hardly grow a tree in places. It's so bad. So this is not normal. This is not natural. Same thing. This is the parking lots around Redding. You see this everywhere. People should consider how much UV it takes to do that. This is the planet we're heading for. No question about that. And again, no matter what news you see and from what source, consider a headline is not a fact. You have to consider who put that headline out, and you have to consider what their motive might be. And never, ever ignore your own sense of reason. If someone tells you the planet's getting colder, and I don't like Al Gore, I want to make that clear. I'm not an Al Gore fan or any of those types of people or carbon credits or any of that. It's not about that. It's about reality. When you walk outside and you feel how intense that heat is, and you know that they are trying to hide the fact that they've done damage to the atmosphere, just like the Gulf of Mexico. I don't know how many of you know that they used a chemical called Corexit in the Gulf of Mexico, and that's about the most idiotic term for what the chemical does. It doesn't correct anything. By the environmental impact reviews done in the Gulf of Mexico, that chemical made the situation 52 times more toxic. It's banned around the globe, so why did they use it? To hide the problem. Same mentality is going on here. It's making our situation exponentially worse. Now, this is where it starts to get really interesting. This headline's a day old. How does NOAA know that even though we have an El Nino that's building that should bring rain to California, how do they know that we shouldn't count on El Nino to bring us rain? How do they know that? Are we not scheduled to get any rain? Because at this point, it's not forecasting, it's scheduling. And this is Raytheon giving us this headline, not NOAA. How can they possibly know that we're not going to get any rain out of an El Nino? Because they can migrate this moisture across us as long as they want. And how secure can any of our futures be when we don't control what should be natural, when we don't control the weather? They control how much falls on us, how much not. how toxic it is, what other chemicals there may be in it. We're getting aluminum, barium, strontium, copper, manganese, and all these metals are toxic in and of themselves. But you start to mix these metals, and now you have a very lethal mix. You have something called synergistic toxicity. In the case of aluminum and mercury, we all have mercury in us, we know that. We all have aluminum in us now, we know that. There'll be some testing data presented tomorrow. Every human subject tested, whether it's hair, urine, or blood, is showing massive amounts of these metals. In the case of aluminum and mercury, when you mix these two metals with synergistic toxicity, you can increase that toxicity by 10,000%. So when you consider how lethal we know each of these metals are, and you bump that up to that degree, it's a bad mix. Again, when someone tries to tell you this is normal, they need to seriously check their reality. Nothing normal about this. And again, when we know that a high bypass turbofan jet engine, I encourage anybody to go to geoengineeringwatch.org, look at the tutorial we have halfway down the middle of the page. It's a 20-minute tutorial that will explain that a high bypass turbofan jet engine is almost incapable of producing a, quote, condensation trail. And again, we know it's not condensation. We have film footage of them being turned on and off at altitude, not natural. This is our website. The sole purpose of this website is to get the word out, to simply get the word out to everyone who's willing to prioritize the battles we face. There's a lot of challenges coming at us. I know that. I focused myself on this issue because, quite simply, this is the hole in the bottom of the ship. If we can't stop the climate engineering, nothing else will matter. Nothing else will matter. This is tearing apart Earth's life support systems. Think of the level of human insanity it takes to think that you could play God with the weather without killing everything. That's what we're up against. We're not politically oriented. We don't sell anything. In fact, we give it away. I try to give everything away I possibly can because I simply want the word out, because my children have no future if this continues. And the immediacy of our situation can't be overstated. This is not a linear equation. You have certain elements of academia. In fact, the largest scientific panel ever created in human history on any subject is the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They don't have any feedback loops built into their modeling, which means their modeling is virtually worthless. So the science they're trying to feed you is virtually worthless. That makes you think that something bad might happen in 50 years or 100 years. We're not on that kind of time frame. Our climate system is disintegrating right now, and geoengineering is the largest single factor fueling that fire. And with the military-industrial complex mentality, the worse a problem gets, the more you just do the same thing to try to cover it up. And that doesn't work. And we have a lot of good people in the military, wonderful people. In fact, today, I was in the recruiting offices for the Marines, the Air Force, and the Army. Great people there. Very respectful, very honorable men and women. And they are very receptive when I pass them on data and simply explain that there's a lot of academicians, a lot of scientists that are simply very, very misguided. And we're trying to get the word out so that the military knows that the advice they're being given is absolutely lethal. And we will all go down with the ship if those in power continue to follow that advice. So we need the support of our military brothers and sisters. We're all in this together. I want to do Q&A now, but I'm very grateful for everybody that's come tonight, everybody tomorrow morning. The meeting is extremely important in Shasta County. There's a movie, by the way, Terry mentioned to me, called America, that's playing right now at Movies 14. Apparently they show the spraying in that movie. A lot of you have seen that, perhaps. It's not mentioned, but it's going to be mentioned soon in a lot of arenas. I was contacted by Oliver Stone's son, who's a director, to address this issue soon. There's a lot of people that have the ability to get the word out that are now involved. So anyway, the film America, I think, is a good one to see, but I hope as many of you as possible can show up tomorrow, because we've had a county air quality division that has done their absolute best to hide this, to marginalize it. There's no question about that. In 2008, when I tried to bring this issue before the board, and Russ Mull lied about the cost of testing, he simply lied. There's no other word for it. When he said testing would cost $1 million for for an aluminum test that costs $20. And they cut off the speaking after this. So this is the kind of thing we face. We went into air quality, about 6 of us, to try to get them to come to at least talk to us about this issue. He wouldn't even come to the front desk after not answering emails for a week. It's not like we weren't trying to reach him. A virtual stonewalling. I'm grateful to those supervisors that helped put this on the agenda for tomorrow, but from the county employees at Air Quality, we have been virtually stonewalled on this issue, even though we have absolute, indisputable proof of this contamination. So back to tomorrow, extremely important meeting, and why it matters so much is because if we could put this on the radar in Shasta County, it would make a shockwave around the globe. Because if once we have an agency that cannot deny, that the public will not accept that denial, they must admit this contamination wherever they think it's coming from, it's there. It's a public health hazard and it must be disclosed. UV, very, very, very dangerous UV levels, period. The amounts of skin cancer and optical problems are going to be off the charts because UVB is horrifically harmful. And what we're seeing is UVB levels that are 1,200% higher than we're being told. That's astronomically high. So it is their mandated duty to disclose this to the public. If we could get it disclosed by enough public support, it would indeed be covered around the globe. We have a journalist that's coming in from Spain tomorrow to cover this. I think she might be in here right now. Josefina, I see you out there. There we go. Thank you. Thank you for coming. She's done much for this cause, and my deepest gratitude to her for showing up. But it's all of us together that matters, in unison, to make our voice heard now, because we don't have tomorrow. We don't have the time to spare in this battle. This issue, above all others, must be won. It's a uniting issue. It brings everybody together. So my deepest gratitude for all of you. I hope you will join us tomorrow in this most important meeting. And thank you very much for coming. I'll try to answer your questions now.
Let me make some general observations and then a couple of specific ones. Today, the Shasta County Board of Supervisors has been the beneficiary of some sincere, passionate, and knowledgeable comments. And I thank you for those. I specifically want to call to your attention the outstanding work that is being done on this issue by Mr. Dane Wigington and Ms. Kathy Kresser. They've done a wonderful job. I think your comments outlining what the AQMD can do and can't do are valid. And I think the board has to be mindful about those. But I will tell you, especially in the arena of the U.S. EPA, I am disappointed in that, let me finish please before you might want to take your hands down. I am disappointed because there was a man running for U.S. Congress that said he's one of us. Is his representative here today? Did you see his representative here today? I did not. And I think it would have been productive and helpful had his representative, LaMalfa's representative, been here today to listen to this heartfelt testimony. I am in agreement with my colleagues about sending letters and a call for action, but I would hope that we could go a step further in that. And you tell me, Mr. Lees, if this is possible, which I think it is. I would like for us to send a copy of this video where all of you spoke today, all 2.5 or 3 hours of this testimony. I would like that video to be sent to our senators and our U.S. representatives, and also our representatives in the state of California.
We'll do that.
Let them listen to the passion that came out of this meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Kehoe. Supervisor Giacomini?
Well said. I would so move.
Second?
Second, and then under discussion, Mr.
All right.
Lees.
May I just ask for a clarification of the motion?
Certainly. Certainly. That we gather the information from the park, so we have hopefully some data. So that's the first thing on the list, I believe.
Okay.
Then we compile information that we heard today in a succinct letter along with that information, send it to all the representatives that David has outlined, as well as those agencies, Cal EPA, US EPA, California Air Board, and perhaps the Department of Transportation, like Rick mentioned, along with a video of the hearing today. Is that clear?
Yeah, that's
Thank you.
So,
you want a second?
do you want to re-second? Do we have a second to that already?
We have a second. You're second.
Well, I second it, but I'll withdraw, Mr. Modi, if you'd like to second it.
I just have a comment,
Okay.
so go ahead.
Okay, so do you want to confirm?
Yes.
Your second, thank you, Mr. Modi.
Yeah, I just want to know if part of that is, we also asked Mr. Simon to go find out what he can, we talked about, you mentioned about Lassen Park, but I mean, what we can do as far as measurements and those kind of things, not that we're asking you to do them, but just find out what that process would that be part of the...
Yes, perfect. You can add that. David, do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have one other question of Mr. Lees. Mr. Lees, should anyone in the audience wish to get a copy of this video, how can they go about doing that?
There's a couple of ways to do it. The easiest and most effective way, in my opinion, is to go online. Within an hour or two, you'll be able to watch this entire meeting at any place you want to. You don't have to sit there and watch the whole 3 hours or 4 hours, but you could actually pick out different portions. So you can actually go on the Shasta County website, go online, and watch any one of our Board of Supervisor meetings. And it should be ready to go certainly within the next 2 or 3 hours. This is a little longer, so I'm giving myself a little bit of time. So.
Thank you, Mr. Lees. Supervisor Modi?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think we're going to take a vote here in a second. I wanted to add one more thing under discussion. I also wanted to personally thank Mr. Wigington for your efforts here today. I thought that you put together a very well thought out presentation, and I can tell you that I sat down and watched an hour and 20 minutes, I think, whatever it is, 110 minutes of the video. I watched all that, so I had a chance to do that as well. And I think I just would wrap it up with one little, I don't want to go too far with this, but I wanted to say that, this is an uphill battle for probably some of us here at the board level with this information and stuff. But I thought that the way that the speakers spoke today with respect and tried to just tell their story and not be accusing other people or attacking other groups and stuff. I mean, pretty much everybody did that. I think that helps your cause. If people don't do that, you're going to turn people off really quick, because no one's going to help you when you spit them in their eye and then ask for help. So I do appreciate that you made that effort, and I know Kathy helped you do that as well. So thank you for taking the time and effort to bring so much information to us today.
And then just under discussion, I have one question in regards to the motion that's made. It was pointed out earlier that we had in 2008 sent the material, but that it lacked the request for a response. Can we include in whatever we send not just our request, I guess our demand that there be a response to the Shasta County Board of Supervisors? Maybe there's a better way of putting that, but I think you understand my point.
In a timely manner. Yes.
Correct. And I thought I embedded that in there, but
Well,
if not,
maybe you did.
okay.
Maybe you did,
Okay,
and
Larry,
I
you
just
did
missed
get
it.
Okay, thank you.
Very good, very good. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, you have the motion in front of you. I think it's understood. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion passes unanimously. So again, thank you all for attending today. I think that you have exactly what you asked for, a platform. And that was offered, and and received today, and I believe that it wouldn't surprise me at all if the response is one that exceeds far the boundaries of Shasta County in terms of the platform that is offered, as evidenced by those who attended today from around the world. That's very impressive.
Inspirational for me personally, and he was the creator and the host of all of the interviews in the amazing documentary Thrive, which I hope you've all had a chance to see if you haven't, or if you want to take a copy home with you tonight, we have them in the back there. We're asking for $20. Your donation will go to this campaign. Anyway, they've been inspirational. Their movie has been seen by tens of millions of people around the world, giving us all a much bigger idea of what's going on and inspiring us to take the steps that we can do to create a world in which we can all thrive. Foster Gamble.
Thank you very much, especially to Bruce and Cynthia for kicking off, catalyzing yet another wonderful campaign on an absolutely critical issue. And thanks to you all for taking the evening to come out and hear more bad news, but in a creative context of what we can do about it. I am so proud to live in Santa Cruz, California. It's not only the most beautiful place on the planet with the best weather, but one of the main reasons that I moved here was because of the people, because of the conversation that is going on here that is probably the most open-minded conversation that I've come across in any community that certainly that I've lived in, but probably that I've visited as well. And I'm especially proud that when it comes time, when the crisis hit, Santa Cruz stands up. And in 2007, when they started spraying toxics from 1,000 feet, and people were getting sick, and birds were dying, and insects were falling out of the sky, and fish were washing up on the beach, Santa Cruz County stood up and was probably the most catalyzing community in stopping what was essentially a $1 billion program coming directly from the president through Homeland Security and the USDA and then through the CDFA to spray us with toxic chemicals for 9 months a year, and they had authorization to do it for 10 years. Oh my God. And so as we were all kind of running around, going to different hearings, and all of our arguments were disappearing in the back room and so forth, Kimberly said one day, why don't we gather people who are motivated and who are already being active on this issue, why don't we gather them in our living room and share with them the 12-sector solutions model that we've been developing along with Barbara Mark Suber, the Foundation for Conscious Evolution, and the Shift Network, and about 10 other organizations. But basically we're working on this model off and on for about 10 years. So we did that a few nights later. 30 people came, and Kimberly shared with them the essence of this model that she'll be sharing with you in just a little while. And it was one of the main factors, in my opinion, that helped us turn random, passionate activism into a laser beam of effectiveness. And the bottom line is that the people of Northern California ended up stopping that program with probably about $30,000 to $40,000 in 6 months of time. Stopped a $1 billion program from the president. And then when they started doing mandatory installations of smart meters, Santa Cruz stood up once again and said, wait a minute. This is more radiation, more toxicity, and we're not going to put up with it. So Santa Cruz County used a lot of those same email lists to contact their friends, get people informed, and ended up being the first county in the United States of America to ban mandatory installation of smart meters. So one of the things that we did in both of those movements was to say to everybody, let's learn the principles really well and keep your email list, because these are just two of a massive onslaught that will continue to come our way until we stop it and turn it around. And so now, here we go again. And instead of spraying us from 1,000 feet, and in our local area, now they're spraying from 30,000 feet, and they're spraying essentially the entire globe, as Dane did a brilliant job of. I'm glad we don't have to go into convincing people of all that. How many people are hearing about this issue for the first time tonight? Just raise your hand. Okay. All right. Good. Well, this is a very informed community, and each of us has the challenge of talking about this with people who have no idea. And people who assume that they know what those trails in the sky are. Well, those are contrails. We know about those. No issue. So in my humble, but I would say educated opinion, this is the second most dangerous issue on the planet right now, after nuclear radiation, nuclear weapons, which also has global scale implications and can happen in an instant. This one is happening already, and it's global, and it's getting inside, as Dane said, it's getting inside all of our bodies whether we like it or not. And it's going to continue to until people like us stop it. So why Kimberly and I especially wanted to come tonight was to share a context and principles and strategies for solutions. We are about solutions. Thrive was made to help inform people come up to speed as quickly as they can on what's really going on in the world, but only, hold on. But only in order to get us informed enough that we can create solutions which are commensurate with the problems, really the dire emergencies that we have at hand. So we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the most common questions about chemtrails, but we're going to spend the rest of the evening essentially talking about what can we do about this. The title of our movie was Thrive, What on Earth Will It Take? And that's our main emphasis now, on what it will take. And we're finding lots of really valuable insights and strategies and principles as to what it will take. We want to share a bunch of those with you tonight. So I just want to show you a few pictures first to bring this all local. And you've all seen chemtrail pictures, but if anybody thinks that it's not happening in Santa Cruz, I want to show you just a few of literally hundreds of pictures that I've taken from the deck of my own home up in SoCal. So if you could turn off the lights for a moment. See that? The last month has been blessedly clear, I'm happy to say. But you notice it's going periodically, and I get reports from people all over the country, and other areas of the country are very heavy right now. You might have noticed it's particularly heavy right before a moisture front seems to be coming in, and then it dissipates.
Right.
It's a desiccant. It takes the moisture out of the air.
Yes.
And also, the more tourists are in town, the clearer your skies.
Oh, really?
Chemtrails.
I notice sometimes they take holidays off too, because people might be at the beach looking up. This is the view from my office window. I'll tell you, this is one of my most challenging emotional experiences in life right now, is when I walk out and see this, and it makes me like want to hold my breath. That's not very helpful for very long. So to be actually with a group like this in Santa Cruz beginning to take action just feels like a tremendous relief and very exciting to me. And that's, as it spreads out, starts to look like that, and pretty soon we have a great day.
Today it looked like that. Yes. Just before we came to this meeting.
Now, some people think they go straight these paths, so it must be just a regular jetliner. Usually, jetliners don't fly the grid pattern. Oh, I forgot some. Yeah, somebody forgot their luggage. And this is right out over the bay here, and about maybe 2 hours later they did it again, exactly the same pattern. Wow. So last Christmas we took our families up to ski in Tahoe, which is traditionally one of the cleanest skies in the country. And that's what we were greeted by. And an hour later it looked like that.
Crisscross.
This was a picture from New Zealand. New Zealand got the moth spray before we did, and they really helped educate us on what was really going on, how to stop it. And these are a couple of pictures from the Bay Area protests against the spray that ended up being so effective, especially once the moms got involved.
I like that.
Politicians don't like to piss off the moms. This is from the day we took over the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, I'm going to leave that on for a little bit. You can turn the lights on again, Bruce. So I want to talk about possible motives. Okay. Everybody's wondering and talking with each other about why in the world would they be doing this. And the truth is, I don't know for sure. There's some things where they've got patents and there's plenty of evidence, like weather modification. But there are a lot of other motivations for which none of us really have the proof. And it's worth looking into what possible motivations there are. And especially critical to realize that in some ways it doesn't matter. For us to be active about it, we don't have to have all the perpetrators nailed down and all the motivations decided upon. Because if there's a fact that this stuff is being dropped out of the sky and is toxic on a regular basis, then we need to do something about it. However or why ever they're doing it, we need to do something about it. So whether it's a benevolent and misguided, attempt to stop global warming, or whether it's an intentionally malevolent depopulation agenda.
That's what it is.
Well, we do have certainty, finally. So the fact of the matter is we're breathing it, and the plants and the animals and the insects in our area are being affected. So let's look at some possible motives. One is, as I mentioned, mitigating global warming. Another is enhancing the radar capabilities, detection capabilities, and the effectiveness of their HARP antenna and many other of these auroral antennas that are all over the planet. HARP is not the only one. I think there's evidence of at least 7 or 8 in the United States alone, and other countries have them as well.
I saw a list of 13.
Okay. And in this country?
No, it's scattered.
Okay. And then weather modification. Why would they want to modify the weather? Well, of course, if you're in a drought and you want water, targeting storms. Also, if you follow the money, you find out that if you can modify the weather, then you can play the futures market because you got inside information, because you're deciding what the weather is going to be. Mm-hmm. Another is cornering the market on food. And what a coincidence that Monsanto recently got a patent on aluminum-resistant seeds.
Oh, why would they do that?
Oh, I don't know.
Another is the possibility of dumbing people down.
Which aluminum does.
And aluminum does that. A number of the other chemicals do. And so if you look through the lens, as Thrive does, how many people in the room haven't seen Thrive yet? Okay, great. We talk in the movie about the global domination agenda. And whether you believe it or not, we try to present enough compelling evidence in the film on the website to make it at least something you want to check out. If you look through that lens, it would make a lot of sense. If a few people want to control over 7 billion, then you've got to have them poor, you've got to have them afraid, you've got to have them sick, and you've got to have them dumb, and uninformed. So the chemicals will do that. Sickening, just like when we started working on this moth spray, one of the groups immediately started trying to get the information on what was in this pheromone spray that was being dropped over Santa Cruz and 11 other counties all the way up to Sonoma. And of course the company said, no, we can't tell you that because it's a trade secret. We're like, no, wait a minute, we're breathing it, we need to know. There's this thing called informed consent, and we don't consent. So finally we got Schwarzenegger to actually stop the spray and make the company reveal it. And Kimberly and I were already years into the making of Thrive, but it hadn't come out yet. So we couldn't say a whole lot of what we suspected without seeming completely insane. But we really suspected that from the get-go that it was an agenda from the presidential level, and that it would not only be intended to make people sick and to destroy crops and so forth, but also to sterilize people, to depopulate through those means. So when they finally had to reveal the chemicals, they said it was just a harmless synthetic scent to confuse the moths. Well, it turned out there were 10 chemicals in there, 6 of which were toxic. Wow. There were mutagens, carcinogens, would change your genes, give you cancer, and then endocrine disruptors, which can render particularly women infertile. So, we suspect a lot of the same sort of agendas when the same people are spraying now from 30,000 feet. So sterilizing is another one, depopulating is another one. And if any of you have followed Clifford Carnicom, he's been one of my heroes for 10 years. And this guy's just been on a shoestring doing the most amazing research. And I think he was the first to identify these synthetic nanofibers. Yes. And they're coming out of people's, oozing wounds who have this Morgellons disease. And if you gargle with red wine and spit it on a napkin, if you've been exposed, oftentimes those fibers are there. And these fibers are not only man-made, so how did they get up? But they also, Clifford reveals that they have a tendency to self-organize. They will find each other and wrap around each other and end up creating an antenna, which can both receive and transmit. So they can begin, because they've been trying to get chips in us for a long time, and it's not working out so well for them so far, because people are waking up. And this is another technique, I believe, that they're trying to get little antennae in us so they can both track us and then affect us emotionally in our health and so forth with their ELF and EMF signals. Wow. And there are other ones even farther out than that, but I'm going to leave it at that for now. Oh, no, stop. So, how many people from here have participated in the Freedom Forum? Okay, great. Another thing I love about Santa Cruz is people are waking up to what this whole freedom thing is really about. And we really had to go to school on the liberty perspective around the moth spray, because Kimberly and I were quite steeped in it already, but people who weren't familiar with it, who were adamant that the solution to not being sprayed was to get it on the agenda, 6 months from then or something like that, and then take a vote, and hopefully people would vote that they had to get our approval, some sort of majority vote in order to decide whether each of us as individuals would get sprayed with these toxic things. And so Kimberly and I were saying, no, wait a minute. Bruce was talking before about if this is a republic, then we have the right not, whether it's a republic or not, we each have an intrinsic right not to be poisoned by anyone else. And that's the rudder.
It's running away. Wow. The robots are at it. There he is.
So we'll go over this again and again and again, and invite you to, and with your friends as well, because if you keep in mind that the fundamental principle is that nobody has the right to violate us. I mean, they might claim the right. They certainly have in dictatorships throughout the world, and in royalties and all of that. And guess what? In democracies also. All they got to do is get 51% or a rigged vote or an executive order, and supposedly they have the right to do whatever they want, basically. And what we're saying is, no, that's not true. And that's what people need to wake up, and take back the inalienable rights that every human being has.
Constitution, Republic, yeah.
Yeah, we talk about the Republic as if the Republic is going to save us. Well, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the Republic of North Korea, the People's Republic of China. I don't think the word's going to save us. Wow. So one of the things that I'm excited about is Santa Cruz being able to play a role, once again, of modeling what's possible for the whole country. Because even more than the moth spray, this is a huge mountain to climb. This is a global issue with tremendous vested interests, a lot of money behind it. It's obviously been totally covert so far. So the challenge, the same challenge that we've had with Thrive and you have with so many other issues, is to experience the urgency, because it's happening to us all in our environment right now, and at the same time relax into knowing that we're in this for the long haul. And the notion that Santa Cruz County could get the federal government to stop doing this, you know, by some petition or resolution, doesn't make any sense to me. But that doesn't mean not to do it, and not to do a whole bunch of other things. When we were doing the moth spray, Kimberly kept saying to me, you know, she's an incredible gardener, so she knows that natural growth, she kept saying, it's a messy process. You know, you need your Martin Luther Kings and you need your Malcolm X's and everything in between. So when some people are working on legislation, other people are doing protests, other people are doing petitions, other people are doing direct action, and other people are doing lawsuits and media campaigns and so forth. And it's really a whole systems approach that is needed. And it's not that one of them is necessarily going to be the thing that succeeds, but the whole system can succeed much more powerfully if we're all in it together than if we just you know, have a few people and take one route and just, you know, hope that it works out. Also, if you've seen any of the movies by Mike Murphy and his team, the What in the World Are They Spraying and Why in the World Are They Spraying, and he's just getting started on the third and final one, Who in the World is Spraying? And one of the reasons that's coming last is that following the money on this one is very dangerous and therefore very expensive, potentially, because in this realm, it's my belief that you need to hire professionals. And you need to get private investigators who really know a lot about security to go after the information and find out who, you know, where these planes are landing and who's paying for them and who's paying for the chemicals. And just when you follow that, you get into the shadow realms very quickly. And the vested interests in this are huge, and we know well that they will stop at nothing to keep their secrets. So that's one of the reasons why we're in it for the long run. And Kimberly and I have been planning ultimately a global campaign against chemtrails that will start with an internet webinar that will really access countries all over the world. And we've been pledged funding for that, and it hasn't arrived yet. We're not sure when it will. But part of that funding will go to getting the investigators who can get that information and stay a lot safer than the rest of us as rookies would. So it's important that we get that we can do a huge piece in Santa Cruz by modeling what just like Shasta took a huge first step. They're doing it in Long Island. They're doing it in Sedona. There are many solutions groups. There's over 1,000 solutions groups now in the Thrive network in 97 countries around the world, and a whole bunch of them are working on chemtrails. So this is a matter of doing everything we can here while linking up with other people and sharing information and best practices and all that type of thing. Okay, I think for now I'm gonna leave it at that and pass this on to Kimberly, who will talk to us about the whole system's 12-sector solution model that has been so effective. And then we want to leave plenty of time so that people, if you're inspired to, can actually go to the tables back there and gather around a sign for the sector that you're most interested in. She'll describe it. And she's also created some questions as kind of catalyzing questions for each of the sectors of the sorts of things that people can be spending their time on very usefully right now. So without any further ado, let me pass on to my partner and my inspiration in life, Kimberly.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a real strategist, and that's kind of my role in all this. It's like after a certain amount of bad news, it's sort of like, all right, wait a minute. What's the minimum sufficient that I actually need to understand in order to gather together the widest net possible so that we can actually, gather together and do something about this. And every time I'm in a room with people on any given issue, what I've found is that as much as we're all here because we're interested in learning about or concerned about geoengineering of our atmosphere, we actually have different particular passions about that. Some people really want to understand what are the health ramifications for the human body. Others want to know what are the impacts on bees and insects and pollination, and others on the soil, and others about surveillance and this notion of increasing radar capabilities. And so instead of just having this room of people here who are educated and already concerned, in order to take on this issue, it is huge. And it really is going to take a long time. And I, went to Berkeley in the 60s. I've been an activist ever since. And so many of my friends have burned out. And I think that it's because we had the notion that we had to do it all, And then, of course, you just fry and burn out and can't keep it up. So given what's going on now, we got to come up with ways to do this in a way that we can sustain ourselves and that we can also reach out to other people who maybe don't share our worldview entirely. It took me years of immersion. I was a good Democrat. I worked for Newsweek International. I was a mainstream journalist. I came at it with the belief that if people were informed, they would make good decisions. And it was a ragged and painful journey that I went on to actually get as informed as I am now. And not everybody wants to take that journey. And so what is the minimum amount that we need to agree upon to take responsibility to say, we want to stop this? And we're going to go at it in a variety of ways. Now, I'm not personally a legislative gal. It just is really challenging for me to ask people for the right to not be poisoned. I'm not that patient or something. I don't know what it is, but I recognize that it's an important thing to do. So there are people who can do that. I've done it. I've worked with the Board of Supervisors. I worked with creating a program for homeless teens here years ago, and had to work a lot with the Board of Supervisors, and I learned that there are certain things that you really need to do strategically to make that be effective. And one of it is that we're going to have to engage a lot more people than are here, and it's going to have to be a wide range of people. So I think it's really important that we distinguish between fact and speculation. Now, the fact is it's absolutely documented and proven that we are being sprayed. The evidence is there, you can find it, and one of the things that we did in the course of our research on this, as Foster said, we were promised some money that hasn't come through yet. So we've been designing a program that we would do with that money to take this on globally. Meanwhile, we need to get started. Here we are. And there are things that money can do that you can't do without it, like certain levels of secure private investigation that I think are going to be needed to solve this. I think we need some private investigators in there because following the money is very risky. And for those of you who haven't seen Thrive, it's free online at thrivemovement.com, where you can donate what you can toward it and get a copy here, and the money goes to support this coalition here. And I encourage you because I think it lays out a whole picture that's really important. Anyway, the idea is that here we all are, and we have these different passions actually that are motivating us. And so the sector model is a way to say, all right, how do we acknowledge that in moving forward from here? There are some people who are really oriented toward the economics and they want to follow the money. That's Foster and I are always into that. We want to know, how is this stuff being funded? And who's benefiting, and what are the ways that, where could there be a financial incentive in this program? Because until we get at that and stop it, there's going to be a full force behind it. So in the economic sector, it would be people who want to gather together the research on that and figure out what do we know and what do we still need to know. And we gave a huge list of resources that we've already compiled that Bruce has put on his website. So
Tomorrow.
Okay, so tomorrow there will be, if you go, what's the website?
It's a meetup site. It's meetup.com/thrive-Santa-Cruz.
Okay.
And it will be, if you go to the pages, there's a tab at the top for pages. You go to the pages, there's a page for geoengineering, chemtrails, and weather modification. And the link to all those resources will be right there.
Okay, so those resources can help you get started, whatever sector you end up signing up for. And also, we could make that easier somehow than that website. I'm not sure.
Why don't you say it one more time?
Yeah, or why don't you write it down? Okay, just Google Santa Cruz Thrive or take one of these handouts.
It has the website on here. It also has a tiny URL link to the geoengineering page.
Yeah, okay, great. So you do that, and there are resources there that you can get started to find out what do we know already about the futures markets, for example, and the role of predicting weather and the money that comes back. And then you start tracking that and you find out, so who's making money in the futures markets? And do those same people have to hold the claims? What about the chemicals? Who's manufacturing those chemicals? And who's making the money on it, so that you start to create a thread that makes some sense about unraveling and follow the money. Other people want to know what are the health ramifications on humans. Others would want, that would be under health, the health sector. Other people are going to want to check out more related to the environment and to find out what's the impact on the soils and the trees and to gather the information. And so again, it's finding out what information is already out there and then what information do we still need. The other sectors, so in education, what materials are available to help educate people and what materials still need to be created? I personally think that it's very valuable to have materials that do not mix fact with speculation. Because then you're already down the road of needing to share a worldview about, you know, it's because they want to dumb us down and they this and they that people have trouble relating to if you're not already really immersed in this whole notion of an agenda. And rather than wait, you know, think that we need to agree upon that, we don't. We need to agree on the fact that we're being sprayed, and most thoughtful, conscious, awake people at any level will say, even if I want to be sprayed on, I respect your desire not to be. So you can kind of build a coalition from there. So I think we need educational materials that actually just lay out the facts.
Yeah.
And don't mix that with speculation, because I think you narrow your net in who you can engage to participate in this. And I think that's going to be really important in going to the Board of Supervisors and to the City Council and stuff. We need to stick with, you know, what's the minimum sufficient that they need to get in order to take action. So then there's the governments, and those are for the people who are going to want to be doing, working with local legislators or state, whatever level we decide you want to go forward on this. And the part there that's so important is that however the proclamation is worded, it needs to be really, we need to be careful that there's nothing that gives them the power to usurp our power as grassroots activists. I think it's great if Shasta or Santa Cruz County or any jurisdiction will take this on and stand behind it in some kind of a meaningful proclamation. That will be helpful, because as we gather those together, it matters. That really does help. It helped a lot in stopping, it's the light brown apple moth, And when we got a lot of the different city councils.
27.
Yeah, 27 different city governments that we got to take that on. So once you get one, it's easier to get another, and that really is helpful. But it's not essential. If we don't get it, we're not going to give up. And so we need to be sure to word it in that way, that we don't hand this over to some kind of a vote where, you know, who can put in a few $1 million into disinformation in the county, get the vote to go the wrong way, and suddenly we've completely lost. So the governance sector needs to be educated about how to do this in relation to all of the other sectors. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I'm a big believer in is personal accountability. I think that as jurisdictions fail to come through to us, we need to move toward personal accountability and go toward the individuals who are making those decisions and hold them accountable for decisions that they are making that are truly harmful to our individual health and well-being. And that when we do that, we're going to watch a lot of change happen. So I'm not stuck on hoping that the jurisdictions come through. I do, and I think we should work toward that, but I wouldn't stop there. I'm definitely going toward personal accountability. I think that's the way this thing is ultimately going to be solved. In justice, there's looking into the lawsuits that we filed for the light brown apple moth. Those are all templates, you know, and these things, one of the things at thrivemovement.com, we have a solutions hub. And the solutions hub, the idea behind it is that we need to learn from each other. So Thrive, it's now, you know, we can document 25 million people have seen it. That's if one person watched each DVD. And it's in 27 different languages. And Foster and I are probably a lot more optimistic than most people on the planet because we hear from people all over the world every single day who are awake and engaged in doing solutions. And I'll tell you, it's a distorted mirror out there that is reflected in the mainstream media that makes you feel like you're crazy and alone. You're not crazy and you're not alone. There are more people who are awake and disengaged from that mainstream media that we're led to believe is the majority. It's not. And they're here, and we can hook up with them, and we can share our learning, and we can learn from them. So one of the reasons to have this video tonight is to upload it onto the Solutions Hub and say, hey, any other community around the world that wants to start organizing and taking this on, here's our meeting. These are our materials. We upload them. They take them. We do a lawsuit. Someone else does a lawsuit. We take that template and bring it to the attorneys that we get on this team, because we're going to need to get attorneys. We're going to need to get all kinds of people joining in here. And then we share those best practices. We share what doesn't work. And we get to catapult each other ahead. And that's the idea, is that we host this Solutions Hub as a way to share best practices and don't have to each keep reinventing the wheel. So that's what we're going to be doing with what's happening locally and what's happening from Shasta. You know, like Dane, he created that for Shasta, but we got to use it here. He's made that available on the Solutions Hub now through this. That can go to any community anywhere. And the same way with the data. That's what's happened a lot with the GMO movement. It's going like fire because people are sharing the data now, so we don't have to recreate it in every community. So one of the sectors is relations, and one of the things that we found is that because we're all human beings doing this, we tend to run into problems with each other. And even though we're all here wanting to solve this problem, it's just amazing what kind of breakdowns there can be. And so by identifying here already who are some skilled people in conflict resolution and identify them and know that we're going to run into that. There are going to be people who feel really strongly about one thing and others who feel really strongly about another, and even though we have all this in common, it won't be enough to keep those problems from arising. So identifying the people on the relations team who we're going to then be able to call upon, and we just know that. That's just part of a long haul of working together. With the light brown apple moth, I know we had some people who, they were so smart and they were so committed and they were so difficult that we thought, you know, maybe you would want to do all that research and then just feed it back to us, but not actually come to all the meetings. And it turned out that is what they wanted. Actually, that is what they wanted to do. They love to do the research, they cared about it, but they're not people, you know, whatever that's called. So anyway, I think we just need to be realistic about the fact that we're going to run into stuff and that we identify the people who can help us, and that when we leave here tonight, one of the things we're going to each have to do is talk to some other people to help get them engaged. And so what we're going to be doing is, Bruce and Cynthia set it up that at the tables, there's each sector is identified, so that you can go, okay, so what is it that, and in the arts, you know, maybe you are really good at creating how presentations look. Maybe you can help put together a flyer or a one-page thing, whatever it is. We need all of that, and then that gets uploaded onto the Solutions Hub so that another community goes, hey, we want to have a meeting. Here's a template that already looks fantastic. They put together all the photos are there, nice writing, you just fill in the time and place for your community. The idea is that we're here to join together around the world and do this thing over a good long time that it's going to take us to take this on. So the way it works is that you're in a sector and you join together with the folks and you come up and we're going to gather around and take about 30 seconds where you say your name and your particular interest, why you're in that sector, and your skill or passion. Like, just quickly, here's the thing that I'm pretty good at or that I'm interested in, I've done before, and why I want to be in this sector. And then you get each other's contact information. And the way we did it with the light brown apple mop is that we had, there was a kind of an urgency then. Not that this isn't urgent, but it's going to take a long time. So I don't know how busy everybody is, but I'm guessing pretty busy. And so it might be that on 1 week you have a meeting with your sector group, and you try to get other people to come and be a part of that. And then the next week, you have a representative from that group come, and then you have a meeting of the representatives. So you have justice, governance, media, relations, education, environment, health, science, people who are making some headway in their work in their sectors come and they meet and they share the information. Here's what we're doing in our group. Here's what you're doing. Then that person goes back and the next time says, hey, here's all this stuff that's happening that we're not having to do. And it really helps, because whatever it is, no matter how hard you're working, it's not going to be enough, right, on your own. But you're actually getting fed in what are the things that are happening that other people are doing that make the difference here. So it's an organizing system that actually allows this to move forward over time in a way that you can stay informed about what's going on in other groups. And then once a month you have all of us, and this will just keep on growing, more and more show up where the bigger issues, and we can talk about what are the things that are coming up. There are going to be things that are, we don't know how to handle this particular piece. I think it's going to be very important to get super prepared before making a presentation to the Board of Supervisors or any city council. I think we need to get our ducks in a row. We need to have a whole lot of people who can really show up. We need to have the media team be, well versed in. As I mentioned, I used to work for Newsweek, and there are things that you can do to be a skilled interviewee. And one of them is you get your points really clear that you're going to say no matter what the question is. And you figure out, you've got 3 answers, and they kind of vary according to your 3 main points that you want to make. And whatever the question is, you find a way, you practice answering your question as if it's answering the question. But you're really making sure to make the points that you want to make every single time. And that's just something that you practice, and you share the information, and you get clear that we're all in agreement that those are the points we want to be presenting. So this is just a real strategic, how are we going to take the passion and the rage and the sadness and the rest of what we're feeling about being in the situation that we're in, or even the confusion if it's a new awakening that we have a problem here. We have a real problem. and we got a lot of them. And this one happens to be, impacting us in a really direct way that needs our attention. So it's our contribution. We saw it work with the light brown apple moth, and I'm convinced that when you actually tune into who you are, you know yourself, you know your particular interest and passion in this, and you go with it, you're going to have a lot more energy for it than if you're trying to do the part of it that you think should be done, but it's not really your thing. You don't need to worry about it. And if there's a sector back there that doesn't have anybody at the table, it will. Like it will, I don't think we've ever been in a room, we've been traveling around the world for years now with Thrive, and I don't think we've ever been in a room where almost every issue didn't break out in some way like this. We just have our different orientations. So if there are any questions about, so spirituality, to me, kind of at the core of who I am and how I identify. I don't know how to have a particular place to have in this movement other than one that permeates all of it. If there's something that someone thinks of, I also do.
I'm very clear about it.
What would you recommend?
I would have to bring up a touchy issue, but would really go into it, is how we create reality. How we create our personal reality and how we create our mass reality. And I research it. I've been researching it for 30 years. My life stands for it.
Great.
All right, great.
I will head this up.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that. And then the other one that I didn't have on, so I just put out a list of kind of questions off the top of my head, like, under governments, are there any other countries acknowledging the spray, and in what context? Because that's a big way to get forward. Like China, before the Olympics in 2008, was putting out all over the place how thrilled they were that they could control the weather, right? So there you've got a government saying they did that. It's in certain textbooks for children now on global warming. It acknowledges solar radiation management as one of the things that's being done to help. Well, anytime you can take those documentations where it's being acknowledged somewhere, that's very important. So you gather that stuff together. Anyway, I just put some questions under the different sectors, and they're back there for you just to get you started. But at this website, there really is, there are hundreds of links already to just kind of start checking it out and getting yourself fully educated. And part of what you need to do is notice what hasn't been done yet, because that's what we need to come up with. And when the funding comes through for Thrive Movement, we'll definitely put it behind paying for the private investigators and the lawsuits and anything else that we can. But meanwhile, we can't wait for that. So if there are questions.
Yeah, let's see if there's, before we break up into the sectors, let's see if there's questions and comments.
Can you explain the infrastructure is not on this website?
Oh, yeah. So, well, infrastructure in this, I would think of as helping to do the organizing, right? Like, how is the infrastructure to keep this movement going? Right now, it's Ruth and Cynthia. We came because we care about this, and we're completely wrapped up in Thrive Movement and won't be like heading this. We're here as a resource in any way that we can be, and we're happy to make the film available to help educate and raise money and stuff like that. But who's going to help with, who's a good organizer to help a community organize? I would think that that might be how we use infrastructure in this case. When we do it in general on this Thrive Solutions Hub, we tend to have infrastructure have to do with energy, new energy technologies, and the infrastructure in that regard. But since this is we're taking on this issue, so we can adapt the different sectors to be relevant. So that's how I would think of it.
One thing that I want to say while you're thinking of any questions that you have is that in regards to what the Board of Supervisors could do, I I think it's our job to clarify for them what they could do. Because if they're thinking, well, God, we're not going to go up against the federal government, we're not going to risk a lawsuit and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, they're just not. If they were to make a very powerful statement, like all the city councils did around the moth spray, then it makes it easier for the next county to just look at the videos that have been created from here in Shasta and elsewhere and go, oh, that makes sense. And, you know, a few hundred people show up at the meeting and go, okay, we'll sign on to that statement. And then pretty soon you've got 20 or 30 of them, and that was just in the Bay Area. Imagine that going around the country. Politicians and corporations really listen to that if they see a cascade starting. So just actually a statement of intent, even if they can't take legal action because of jurisdiction or whatever, is a very powerful statement of alignment. So any other questions?
The other thing you can do is really go to the meetings or the discussion groups between candidates that are up for a vote. Ask them a question. Nail their asses to the wall.
Yes.
Ask the question. Get them thinking and get the other people around you thinking, oh, that is something I care about.
Yeah, that's great. What else? Any other questions? In the back.
Yeah, my experience so far in talking to people, and I do a lot of talking to people, is there's a big difference between being sprayed because of a moth and being sprayed for whatever reason you don't know. So there's a lot of cognitive dissonance going on. People do not want to believe that this is happening. That's true. Yeah, so, yeah, and I actually stand with people and show them. I have turned on a lot of people to this just through my own personal effort, but I'd like it to be bigger. And
you could do chemtrail tours.
I've taken a lot of pictures too.
Like stargazing.
So where does the education, I mean, when you're talking about education or media, what area are we going to figure out how to reach people?
Yeah, both. There's a lot of overlap amongst different sectors. And the more educational materials and understanding you get together, then it naturally moves into media. In fact, let me show you one quick thing.
I would say developing the materials, though, is in education, because the media is a lot interfacing and how you get the message out. That's the way that it happened before.
Thank you.
We don't have time to go over this in any detail, but in retrospect, after the whole moth spray success that we had in Northern California, we went back to see what we could learn from the success and the challenges that we had. And we came up with 10 steps for effective solutioning that really can apply to virtually any issue. And it starts with getting informed about the issue, because you can't educate people into a media campaign until you know. Then, when we're suggesting from Thrive, we suggest that people use the Solutions Hub to aggregate resources. Articulate, and you'll do this in each of your sectors, what would success look like for your sector and also for this coalition? How would you know if you were successful? Assess what are your most highly leveraged actions so that you're spending your energy as efficiently as you can. Identify what actions you will participate in yourself and what roles or functions are still needed. And then you look for people who can perform those roles and functions. One more. Determine how to communicate your issue and the solutions in the most compelling, fact-based, logical, creative ways possible, with the emphasis on the non-violent solutions at hand. Get as much media coverage as possible. Notice that's number 7. So don't go out and seek a lot of media coverage until you've got your act together, because it'll just dilute the effectiveness of your communication. Once you've got a really good story, where people are getting poisoned and some people are standing up and having success, and you've got some principles and you've got scientist support, then it's actually amazingly easy to get free media coverage. Use grassroots activism as well as the legal system. When there were 2 major lawsuits filed out of the light brown apple moth event, one of them just concluded maybe a year and a half ago or something like that, and I made them do an environmental impact report, which came out last week, 3 years later. And they still want to spray and so forth, but they've taken aerial spray off the table. They just don't want to go there again. That's not going to work. So that was a real success. The initial lawsuit, when the decision was an hour from being announced, and we had heard that we won. And Schwarzenegger holds a press conference, and for the first time he comes out in favor of the movement to stop the spray. Because he had also been informed which way the court had decided. So that's one of the ways you can really apply significant pressure. So you want to get a really good legal team. Celebrate the accomplishment of milestones and final victory. You've got to make sure, in the same way that this allows people to relax, do your own calling, but be in communication with people who are also following their calling and covering all the major sectors. You've got to celebrate and have a good time along the way. Good food, good people, good conversations, what makes it worth it for people to hang in there. And then, as I mentioned before, keep your email list because this is the bulwark against future attacks. And what's going to happen, and you can see it happening with the GMOs around the world already, is that as momentum begins to build, you cross a certain threshold, and then they start to back off. People don't want to have to take personal liability or corporate liability, and so they start running for the shadows. And that's the pattern. As the truth gets exposed in all of these different issues, they're poisoning the soil with pesticides and herbicides. They're poisoning our food with GMOs and aspartame and MSG and all this kind of stuff. And they're, would they skip the skies? No, they're poisoning absolutely everything that we interact with. But as we have success, then that multiplies and it will cascade through other solutions.
Fluoride in the water.
Fluoride in the water, exactly, yeah. Question in the back?
I think a good idea would be once a number of counties are brought on board and they're all on the same playing field, they bring a class action suit against California Air Resource Board, CARB.
Yes.
That could give you a lot of attention.
Yeah, and that's what the justice sector can really target a number of different ones and operate on a number of different fronts on that.
Because they're supposed to be protecting us.
Yes, exactly.
I noticed that the 20-year-old, the millennials, won't touch this stuff. They're not compelled by it. I have tried. I meet a few that are okay with this, but they seem to be getting scared off.
Well, that would be a great challenge for the relations sector, for the media sector, and for the education sector, is to find out what communication is missing that they could actually relate to. I know some young people who are quite concerned and engaged, and they can teach us how to do those communications.
Yeah, I think I had a good conversation with one young person, and he said it's the most uninviting movement he had seen. He said all he heard was from a bunch of old fried activists who said, "Oh my God, it's already too late." Basically, that was the energy behind it. And so I said, okay, well then, so that's why part of it is when we're doing the part that we love and care about, there's a different energy. And when you know that other people are doing some part of it, then you go, actually, this is a happening movement. We're taking this on, and we love your energetic part of it. And then it's kind of an invitation into something besides a sinking ship. And I think that that's kind of part of the energy, is to not make it seem so bad and just one of another horrible onslaught. It's so bad, it's like it's got to be that people are waking up, we are taking this on, and as resistant as people are, there are a lot more people getting it now than they were years ago. At least now, I see people going, okay, so then what? Then the next step.
Did I hear you say that you know of other groups who are active on this issue now that are part of your Pride network?
Yes.
And if there are, it would seem like it's very important that right as we proceed into this, that there's some communication coordination between these groups, because this isn't a local issue, this is a global issue. Yeah. And so, are you going to be the facilitators that enable us to rally resources, not just of this group, but all the groups across the country that you know of?
Yeah, absolutely. To get what is happening is that Bruce can feed it in as a solutions group of Thrive to put it into the solutions hub, and we will call it out to the network at any time. Hey, Thrive Santa Cruz is doing this. We've just uploaded the resources from our group onto the hub. Anybody there who's doing something, please coordinate and communicate this. So we can be the person to shout it out to our network, and we interact with that solutions hub. And at some point, it could be good to have some kind of a call, you know what I mean? Like do something where there's a way to really interact once we're all making some headway.
It seems that certainly the decision makers who are doing this and paying for us are national. And in order to influence them, there has to be a crescendo of groundswell moving up toward them together rather than just kind of sporadically here and there, kind of fizzles out here, fizzles out there, and kind of fizzles along the way.
I agree.
So somehow the timing has to be coordinated to create that momentum that they feel the pressure.
I think that's why getting a statement that we agree to, that we want the Board of Supervisors to sign off on, that we send in advance of going to them, we send them, here's a minimum sufficient list of materials that we're providing for you that will help educate you. We're going to come and talk to you, and we are requesting that you sign off on this statement after getting educated. And then we go and we upload that, and we get all the different counties to sign off on that.
But even before we say, here's the statement we want them to sign off on, it'd be good that these other Thrive movement groups sense that this is a good statement that they could push for too. At least that not be the exact same word, but it has to be a similar statement to create that groundswell of.
Yeah, we want to learn from them. If there are other communities that are ahead of us, we can learn from their mistakes.
You think there are some that are ahead of us? Hopefully.
Well, I know Long Island and Sedona have been. They've been out ahead of this community. I don't know exactly what their results are. I know Long Island kind of fizzled based on this jurisdiction thing, but I think they misunderstood that you've got to keep going despite that. Of course you're going to be told, no, we can't do that. But if you give them tasks and resolutions that they can do, and then keep going on many fronts, like this whole systems solutions model, then you can keep going. You don't get stopped by any one particular governmental edict. But I want to make sure, as people are choosing sectors, do you get a sense of, for those of you who've seen Thrive, we go into the fundamental geometry of the universe, and the fundamental energy flow is the torus, and the fundamental structure is the vector equilibrium. The vector equilibrium has 12 points around a single center. That's what this is also. There's 12 different sectors around the center. And then the torus is this energy flow where you meet in your sectors, do your own brainstorming, you self-select some representative who then goes to a different meeting with the synergy team and reports from your sector. You brainstorm as a whole system and then take that information back to the sector. That's what creates the torus and keeps everyone included in a toroidal flow rather than some top-down hierarchical pyramid. And it was phenomenally successful. Things just took off as soon as we started to do this. So let me just do a little sample here before you actually go to the tables. How many people would be interested in, let's say, the environment sector? Okay, we've got a few there. How about the economic sector? Okay, how about justice? Okay, a couple of those. How about arts? How about media? Okay, how about health? Yeah, and so I don't need to go through all the sectors. There's ample representation already, and it may be that not all the sectors are necessary. We used about 8. In the light brown apple moth spray. But if there are people who see, like you saw, a real use for the spirituality awareness and the process of spreading that's very powerful. There's room for everybody to play. These sectors cover, as far as we can tell, all of human endeavor. So when you go back to the table of your choice, just gather around that sign, and then when you have your group together, just take literally 30 seconds each to say, you know, my name is so-and-so, I'm here because of this. This is my interest in this issue, and then this is what I have to offer in terms of skills or passions to this particular sector. And just introduce yourself with only that to begin with, and then the turning point we found in this process. In fact, the Thrive Denver, we're putting out a blog next week, the Thrive Denver has taken on two major issues, free energy and GMOs. And that has grown, the GMO part has grown into a whole statewide initiative, and they just got 40,000 extra signatures on it to put it on the ballot. And that's how fast it can grow very quickly by using this sort of process. So when you go to your sector, then the turning point is when you actually set a date for the next meeting. And then when you set a schedule, okay, let's meet every 2 weeks for an evening or something like that. And then in between, I don't know what your timing is going to be. We will need to get some overall timing because this synergy team needs to meet. I would recommend either once or twice a month. Probably twice to start with, so that you get your structures together. A lot of this work ends up being done. You're just sitting at your desk at home, on the internet or on the phone or something like that, talking to the key people, getting the key information that your sector needs, and then coming back and reporting it. So I would suggest something like having the meeting as a sector once a week, and every other week have your representative go and meet with the synergy team. Something like that. But so if you just cover those things before you leave, and if you don't feel like committing yet, that's fine. You can just on it.
Yeah, there's a.
Yeah, I left these on the chairs. If you don't have one, if you don't have one of these sign-up sheets, there are some more on the table back there, and they're probably sitting around on the empty chairs. But if you're going to go and get involved with one of the sectors, there's a sign-up sheet at the sector. Just sign your name there and leave your sign-up sheet with that sector. That way your contact information will be with your sector that you're involved with.
And the infrastructure person's going to help then in following through to get this going. So, you're going to be self-selecting out of your groups. So the Grange Hall is available as a place to meet. How often, Chris, did you say?
Or you can meet at somebody's home or office or something like that. Most of the groups won't be very big right now, so it's not hard to find a spot.
Right.
I have a question. How many members per group would you suggest? As many as yeah. Is there such thing as too many or too
No.
And also it evolved. So we had two representatives. So one would go, they would go with another, if somebody couldn't go that night, they had somebody else, and then the team might say, let's have some other representatives now. But they're just people where it naturally will come up. I'm able to articulate what our group learned, or a good person to take the notes at the meeting to really compile what's happening so that you can reflect it back to the whole. And you know who are those people in your group, and they'll know who they are. And if somebody says, no, I'm good at that, then you have two, or you call the relations people in to start doing their facilitation. But it's amazing how when you're doing what you want to do, it works way better than when you're in those groups and nobody really wants to take it on. This stuff it's really interesting. This is our lives. How did this happen? Here we are. We have a chance to do this. The other thing about it is don't stop until we're done. That's all. However long it takes, whatever it takes, we're simply not stopping until we stop this madness.
And I've come across documentation in my own research that whatever you want to call them, the elite, the cabal, the Illuminati, or whoever, they have been organizing for decades, if not centuries, in this exact form. I've seen the document where they're planning to take over control of every single sector. So it's useful to get organized. It's just we're actually organizing for liberation. They're organizing for domination. Yeah. So it's a paradigm shift, but some of the organizational structures are the same.
And when you look and you see, oh my God, it's coming at us from everywhere you look, it's like, this is why. Because it's actually a whole systems organizing. You're not thinking in wholeness, but the idea is that you get every sector covered, and that's the way we can succeed. Yeah.
I think
kind of give you an idea, if you're interacting with a board of directors, when you ask them if they would volunteer a hair sample from either themselves or their children, we can have it tested. Oh, that's
I think the fall of the money sector has a contribution there. So I think the main thing, besides signing up, if your group can decide on the date that you want to meet next, then Bruce and Cynthia will be able to be the center of this information and come up with a time when the synergy team will be able to meet, because all the sectors will have done their first meeting. Then you have the first kind of group representative meeting, and then you can start setting a regular schedule after that. One more question?
I have two questions, I'm sorry. Is the spirituality lady going to have a place at one of the tables? She does? Okay,
yes,
great.
yes.
My other question is, if there are two areas that I'm very interested in, sounds like I need to pick just one.
Not necessarily. If you have the time to meet with, there are a number of people with the moth spray process that really wanted to be in two groups, and it just took a little more time on their part. And sometimes they would end up focusing more on one. But the key thing is to be able to make your contribution wherever you feel it's valuable.
Thank you.
So Bruce and Cynthia set it up back there that each sector is represented. So if you would go and sign up and introduce yourselves, write your contact info really neatly.
And we'll be circulating around back there. If you have any questions, we'll be around. Thank you so much.